And now to introduce her documentary, 13th, please welcome filmmaker Ava DuVernay. Come on, stand up, give her a round of applause. Come on, guys, I can't hear it. Come on, give her that love. Show me some love.
Take it away, dear.
Thank you. Oh, that's kind. Very kind. Thank you so much. Thank you. I was just commenting backstage how wonderful it is to see so many fellow members here tonight on a rainy night to celebrate music and documentary. It means we're all really nerds. It's fantastic. But anyway, to share a little bit about our film, the clause in our Constitution that our film springs from is the 13th Amendment. And it says that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime, shall exist in the United States. And with that simple clause, the 13th gave oppressors the opportunity to make blackness a crime. So now, over 150 years later, when we examine the mass incarceration and gross disenfranchisement of millions of Americans, the one thing that we cannot use is a blunt instrument. Every life affected by systemic oppression of poor people of color has its own narrative, a lone song to be sung. And since we cannot speak to the 2.3 million of Americans incarcerated for our film, or to the millions who suffered under Jim Crow, or to the thousands slain in extrajudicial killings, one of the ways we hear them is through the voices in our film's music. Music as identity, music as resistance, and too often music as elegy. So one of my primary goals in making 13th was to bring all of the pieces of the prison industrial complex puzzle together, both to teach and examine the insidiousness of slavery's many incarnations. And there's no better way to bring all of the pieces of this film together than with its score. Please enjoy a selection of music from our brilliant composer and my dear friend, who's not here tonight, but I sent him a shout out all the way in New York, and he sends you his love, Jason Moran. Thank you.
One of the things that people have to bear in mind is that when we think about slavery, it was an economic system, and the demise of slavery at the end of the Civil War left the Southern economy in tatters. And so this presented a big question. There are 4 million people who were formerly property, and they were formerly kind of the integral part of the economic production system in the South, and now those people are free. And so what do you do with these people? How do you rebuild your economy? The 13th Amendment loophole was immediately exploited.
After the Civil War, African Americans were arrested in mass. It was our nation's first prison boom.
You were basically a slave again. The 13th Amendment says that, hey, except for criminals, everybody else is free. Well, now if you're criminalized, that doesn't apply to you.
They were arrested for extremely minor crimes like loitering or vagrancy.
And they had to provide labor to rebuild the economy of the South after the Civil War.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back Ava DuVernay and cinematographer Hans Charles.
That was short and sweet. I was like, we were just getting ramped up. Hi, Hans.
Hi, Ava.
So this is one of our two cinematographers, Hans Charles, our other cinematographer, a beautiful black woman cinematographer, who's
Kira
a
Kelly.
unicorn, we call her. We bring her out of the unicorn farm to every now and then as a black woman cinematographer, Kira Kelly. Both were nominated for Emmys for their work. And so I think we just want to talk a little bit about the marriage of picture and sound and music. In the documentary space. For me, 13th was my third documentary. Before I'd even made Selma or the independent narrative films I made before Selma out of Sundance, I was making docs. So the first filmmaking I embraced as a indie filmmaker with no money was documentary. I figure if you've got something good to follow and a camera, you can figure the rest out for not a lot of money. And so we met each other in the independent space.
Absolutely, yeah.
We've been working with each other for a while.
For a long while. I feel like, we go way, way back.
Yeah.
But I worked on your first two documentaries, which was great.
Yes.
And it was just amazing. And they were always you know, the first one was tied to music, the one that I worked with you. So it was about the history of music. So I always feel like as a cinematographer, music is sort of the anchor that I create images from. So it's amazing to see that work here in 13th.
The first documentary we worked on was the two were about music, mostly about hip hop culture.
Yep, absolutely.
And this one, in this film, we span 100 minutes. We spend 100 minutes spanning 400 years. So our goal was to create a primer. I didn't think people would really want to sit down for 2+ hours or a documentary series about this very muscular, intense subject matter.
Yeah.
But you might be able to get people down for 100 minutes, and if you could, what could you pack into that? So we challenged ourselves to put together 400 years of oppression and criminalization in that time. But Jason's part of it was so huge because we asked him to take our images
Absolutely.
and address, the Black musical tradition across the centuries. And so as each kind of century and decade and year and sequence moves along, he's applying different Black musical tradition to each one, whether it's jazz or blues
Yeah.
or opera. We have opera
Absolutely.
singer, we have hip hop. So as we were making the images and you saw the marriage of the two together, I remember talking with you early on, and you were surprised by how cohesively it all fit.
Yeah, Jason, I had a conversation with Jason about it, and he said that he really wanted the music to draw the audience into the history of what was being felt. And he wanted to create moments, sonic moments that allowed the emotions to sink in for the audience. And for him, it was sort of traumatic, in a sense, creating this music, because even though he had the tranquility of his piano and he had these moments that he could create with the orchestra and everything he was doing in terms of composition, he knew when he left the sanctity of his home, he would face some of the same issues that we bring up in the documentary. So for him, working through this doc had a sort of trauma to it. So it's kind of interesting that in the post space that he would feel that emotion.
Well, I felt that while shooting it and while posting it, and we were all, it was intense.
It was, yeah. I mean, I remember talking to you about it when you approached me about working on the doc, and I on set, I think I confessed that I had a brush with the law and that my life could have gone into a separate direction had it not turned out the way it was. So for me, listening to all the interviews and the interviews that didn't make it to the final piece, those interviews still stick with me. And so I feel like the music really draws some of that out, and it allows a certain kind of reflection and peace and it allows you to wrestle with the issues that are brought up in the documentary. And so for me, that's the beauty of what Jason did in the score.
Yeah. I'm really happy about the new, Ricky Minor, one of our great governors, was talking to me backstage about this new category that, I hope that's been announced. Has it been announced? Can I talk about it?
Okay,
Okay,
good.
great. Well, you guys know about it then. The new category that's announced for kind of outstanding achievement in music that has been
Composition.
created for music composition that's been created for documentary series. Because I really feel like, isn't that incredible? Because it's really a different animal when we're making docs, when we're out there shooting, and we're shooting off of a script. There is no script. We're finding it. Sometimes there's not a script. Sometimes there is. But in our early work on this, when I was working with you, there was no script. We're out there. We're finding images. We're putting together story. We're creating script in the edit, and the music has to be evolving as the picture evolves. A very different process. Jason was my composer in Selma, which was his first score, incredible. And he's a Kennedy Center advisor. He's a MacArthur genius. He's brilliant. So he did Selma, and then, so that was very much the script. He knew in advance what those were going to be. He saw dailies as they were coming in. We were seeing themes as we were shooting with this. It's
a crapshoot.
Yeah,
there he's in the post side,
Yeah.
and you're changing, you're evolving, you're discovering things in the process, and he sort of has to kind of wait to see what you're going to come up with, and then you guys kind of marry that together. So the fact that he's able to kind of continue that pace alongside of your discovery, crafting the piece is really amazing. And then the final.
It is, and it's its own way of working in music. So I commend the Academy on recognizing that and acknowledging it within this new category. And I'm excited to see all of the great musicians and composers that'll be recognized within it.
Yeah.
They didn't tell me we could do this, and I can't really see anyone, but if I do like this, I can. And I have time for like one question or two questions. Does anyone have one? The governor's gonna kill me. Ricky Minor's like, don't go off script, but I'm a rebel, a reckless. Anyone have a question about documentary and film? 13th, no one here. Hi. Good, thank you. Thank you. The original idea to put this documentary together, I was approached by Netflix. Ooh, the boogeyman. So ridiculous.
Oh, Ava.
Approached by Netflix to ask me if there was anything I want to make. Lisa Nishimura there, who's in charge of documentary, said, I know early in your career you worked on documentary. Is there anything that you might be interested in doing? And I said, I always wanted to do something about the prison industrial complex. Fascinating subject matter. She said, great, go for it. We want to, amplify your voice. And so when I got in there, I saw that you can't really talk about the prison industrial complex as it is now without giving it context, historical context. And so it became this sprawling piece with a lot of moving parts, a lot bigger than she originally anticipated. But to have that kind of freedom there and that kind of amplification of an idea through them really led me to the places that we go in 13th. And I know that it's been transformative for many people who knew nothing about these issues. It's kind of a crash course in a certain part of American history.
Absolutely.
And so I'm grateful to them. We have one more. We have time for one more. Bam, this side, they're overachieving on this side. They're just
Somebody over there.
I'm not trying to pit you two together, but one over here. Bam.
Yes.
He said the 13th was amazing and personally touching in many ways. Continue. Is this a setup question?
I feel like it's a setup.
Is
Yeah.
this on purpose? Well, I have a new piece dropping. But yeah, we just announced last week a 4-part series that I'm doing that comes out on May 31st that chronicles the Central Park 5 case. And so that's narrative, scripted.
Can I
and-
say I'm so excited
Yeah.
you're doing that because I grew up on the East Coast and I lived through that case and I knew it in detail. So when I heard that you were doing it, I was super excited because I knew the energy they're going to bring to it, and I'm so excited to see what you came up with. But that, for those of us who live in the New York metro area, that was a real thing that we lived through, and there's still trauma associated with that case.
Yes, hopefully there's a healing from that, and our composer from that, a wonderful young composer, and proud to say African-American composer. There are so few, and so I really take pride in amplifying them. But Chris Bowers, who composed Green Book, is handling the music for that piece, which is called When They See Us. So music, docs, narrative, whatever it is, so happy to gather and talk about it. Our time is up, but want to thank you so much for your attention and for coming out on a rainy night. Appreciate it.
And the next piece we're going to see is the Angela Davis clip, talk about Trayvon Martin.
Thanks.
Assata Shakur was one of the great leaders of the Black Liberation Army.
That order given by J. Edgar Hoover was essentially to destroy any black, progressive, third world movement in this country.
They put her in prison, and her allies said, we're not gonna leave her in prison. She had white allies that said, we're not gonna leave her in prison, and pulled her out of prison and got her to Cuba. She's in Cuba right now.
In the next 5 years, something like 300 prisons are in the planning stages, and this government has the intentions of throwing more and more people in prison.
The criminalization of Assata Shakur, the use of the media to represent her as a dangerous criminal, and of course in my own case, where I was represented by the FBI as being armed and dangerous.
The FBI has put black militant Angela Davis on its list of the 10 most wanted fugitives.
And with Angela Davis, the power of the black intellect.
One of the things that we really have to talk about coming to grips with is the whole question of crime. What does it mean to be a criminal in this society? politicized.
That had to be broken up.
And in my case, Ronald Reagan was the governor of California. Richard Nixon was the president of the U.S. The whole apparatus of the state was set up against me. And they really meant to send me to the death chamber in order to make a point.
The actions of the FBI in apprehending Angela Davis, a rather remarkable story again.
The system tried to put the sister on trial, and the sister said, no, we putting you on trial. Comes in the big afro, she didn't go press her hair. She was facing major time. You know, most people, they'd have got a nice little press, you know what I mean? They'd have been there with little white gloves on praying to Jesus. She came in like this. And she devastated the prosecution and walked out of there free.
But the question is, Molly, how do you get there? Do you get there by confrontation, violence?
Oh, is that the question you were asking?
Yeah.
I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. After the 4 young girls who lived, one of them lived next door to me. I was very good friends with the sister of another one. My sister was very good friends with all 3 of them. My mother taught one of them in her class, and they went down, and what did they find? They found limbs and heads strewn all over the place. I remember from the time I was very small, I remember the sounds of bombs exploding across the street, our house shaking. I remember my father having to have guns at his disposal at all times because of the fact that at any moment someone we might expect to be attacked. I mean, that's why when someone asks me about violence, I just find it incredible. Because what it means is that the person who's asking that question has absolutely no idea what black people have gone through, what black people have experienced in this country since the time the first black person was kidnapped from the shores of Africa.
And when you strip out a whole generation of leadership, running folk out the country, killing folk, framing folk, you will be vulnerable to Bill Clinton or anybody else. And they'll do to you what they will.